Access to Democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Crutchfield Dermatology, a full-service treatment center and Medi-Spa in Eagan. Their goal is to help you look good and feel great with beautiful skin. With service built around courtesy, dignity, and respect, Mayo-trained Dr. Charles Crutchfield personally treats each patient and is acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org. Edina Eye Physicians and Surgeons, a division of Twin Cities Eye Consultants, has proudly served the Twin Cities for more than 55 years now in 7 convenient locations. Using the most advanced technology combined with human touch, Edina Eye offers comprehensive services and dedicated specialists committed to excellence with innovative procedures and expertise for the most advanced eye care.
Hello, I'm Dane Smith, and welcome to Access to Democracy. I'm an occasional host here at Access to Democracy, a former journalist and leader of a think tank called Growth and Justice. My guest today is Michael Berndt. He is the relatively new president of Inver Hills Community College and Dakota County Technical College. Michael, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
First, I want to start off with a full disclosure. I happen to be an Inver Hills graduate, a proud graduate. I graduated in 1975. I came from a family with no tradition of college attainment. And I am, as you know, a shameless promoter of Inver Hills in particular and community colleges in general. It made the difference in my life. So it holds a special place in my heart, and I serve on the alumni board, and it's just a real pleasure to have you here. Tell us a little bit, I remember reading not long ago that the Minnesota State, the system of state colleges and universities, that would be like Mankato, St. Cloud State University, then all the community colleges, and then the technical colleges, really are the workhorse of our higher ed universe here in Minnesota. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Is that still true?
It is, yeah. So our system is the third largest system in the country, with 26 colleges, 7 universities, 54 campuses across the state. And so we serve about 300,000 students every year. And so just to put that into context, University of Minnesota system serves about 67,000. All of our private colleges and universities, they serve about 40,000. And so while we all do, I think, great work, just the scale of our operation, I think, speaks to the impact we have on our communities and our economy. Yeah.
So that you have, I did not realize that we were, what, did you say third or sixth highest number?
Third largest system.
Third largest system.
Yeah.
And yet I know we're only about 20th largest population, so that gives us an idea.
I think it speaks to the historic investment that we've made in the state into post-secondary education. Yeah.
As a reporter covering state and local government for many years at the Capitol, I witnessed firsthand how often issues of our effectiveness and the size and scope of our Minnesota state system was how that ranked, and it was always pretty high. There was always a feeling that it had to be funded adequately, and there were some battles over it. Occasionally efforts to close campuses and so forth. So the other interesting thing I think about the community colleges and the state colleges and the technical colleges is that they're undersung and underappreciated. You see, the media seems to cover the U of M and maybe some of the more prestigious private colleges more often, and you get more ink. In general, they have a higher profile. But community colleges and the state system really provides the workers, the workforce. It's more of a workhorse for the workforce.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. Well, I think, for many of our outstate institutions, they're the hub for their communities, right? And they will host staff from the workforce centers. They will work with area employers. I know, at Inver Hills and DCTC, we work very closely with our area employers to help get them workers, and we'll often collaborate on programs. We recently worked with the Workforce Board of Dakota Scott Counties, and with the financial support of the Dakota County Commissioners, we were able to provide free short-term training. This is our workforce mobility program. And we were able to provide free short-term training in things like phlebotomy technology, CNA.
What's phlebotomy?
Where you're drawing blood.
Okay.
Yeah, and so you want people well trained.
Yes, right.
How to manage that. And EMTs, welders, and we were able to bring about 100 people. We had twice the interest, but we had the funding to be able to provide free training for about 100 people, and they're mostly through their training and now into the workforce. And these were folks that had stepped out of the workforce during the pandemic,
right,
or people who were looking for that opportunity to get additional training to secure higher paying jobs.
Another great feature, I think, of community colleges and technical colleges in particular, I think, is the fact that their doors are really open. Many colleges, private colleges, are quite selective. They say no to applicants. It's still the place where anybody can go, right?
Sure, yep. If you've got your high school or GED.
Right.
Yep. And for many students, we're the starting place. So at Inver Hills, many of our students come. About 60% of the students who come to us don't know what they want to study yet. And so they come and they take general education courses, but we also work with them to figure out what's their program of study that inspires them. And then we set them up to be able to transfer. And our system has worked on transfer agreements so that if you take this sequence of courses, you'll be able to transfer to any one of the 7 universities, and that's generally accepted by the University of Minnesota and other private colleges. So it helps reduce the number of courses they take because they know that what they're taking will transfer directly into the degree program.
Right, and at a much lower cost,
Yep.
right? Especially if I remember transferring to St. Thomas, and all of a sudden my tuition was 10 times as much, but I had 2 years under my belt already.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I was looking at a U.S. News article, and I think they were saying that about the average cost for a private university was $39,000 a year, and ours sits at about $5,900. So if you can get a couple of years under your belt at a lower cost, that helps save your overall student debt. And we know that the student debt is far too high for our society. We've got to control that.
I'll never forget that. $5,900 is great. That's a better deal. It seems to me like it still ought to be less.
Yeah.
I know in Europe and other countries it's virtually free. There's efforts to make it free in the United States as well.
Yeah.
And when I went, it was so inexpensive that I was able to buy a house in my junior year. Who can do that anymore? Of course, I had the GI Bill to work with. But
well, there's a pretty direct proportion between state appropriation and the tuition. That when we get an adequate funding, we're able to hold down tuition. And in fact, many of our biennial budget requests are premised on the idea with this level of funding, we'll be able to hold tuition at its current levels.
Right.
And when we don't get that level of funding, then we look to students to help, because we're a nonprofit, and we have to be able to sustain what our operations.
Right.
We're also looking for ways to continually economize. So I'm present over 2 institutions, and about 1/3 of our employees are shared. And so we try to find any efficiency we can to be able to keep the costs down.
Right. So they go back and forth between Rosemount, where Dakota County is,
and
Inver Hills and Inver Grove Heights.
Yeah.
That's encouraging. It's good to hear. Let's back up a little bit and talk about you personally, your journey to Inver Hills and Dakota, DCTC. Where did you start out? Where are you from? What motivated you along the way?
Well, I graduated from Hutchinson High School.
All
So
right,
a Minnesota
Minnesotan.
native. Yep.
Yeah.
And I was the first in my family to get a college credential.
Oh,
So,
just like me.
yeah,
How
yeah.
about that?
And so it was, I didn't really know what I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the University of Minnesota at Morris. Great experience. I went there on an architecture scholarship because I thought I wanted to be an architect.
Mm-hmm.
Took some classes and discovered that, well, maybe I want to go into law. So then I took the placement exam, and I did an internship, and then, but I had the opportunity when I was at Morris to do some student teaching, and I never lost that interest. And so sort of at the last minute, I decided, well, I'll go on to graduate school. And so I went to graduate school in English and taught as an adjunct. We had to come back. We had a death in my wife's family, and we came back to help her father adjust. And so we came back early from my graduate program, and I taught at the University of Minnesota at Augsburg. Great institutions, great experience. But as I was teaching, I learned more about the community college system and sort of fell in love with it, because these were students that I could really make a difference.
Yeah.
I felt when I was teaching at the University of Minnesota, these were strong students.
Right. They're going to succeed.
They're going to succeed whether I'm a good teacher or
That's
not.
right. Yeah, right.
And so I got a job at Normandale as a faculty member there, and I taught about 6-7 years, and then looked for opportunities to have a bigger impact. And that's where I started to move into administration.
Right.
So I was an administrator at Normandale, and then went to Century, and then had the opportunity to apply for the presidency at Inver and DCTC.
Yeah.
And I've loved it.
So, you know what they always say about people being promoted beyond the level of their competence? Teachers who become administrators, I often wonder if they shouldn't just, if they're good teachers, stay where they are. But we do need good administrators, of course.
Well, good administrators never lose that spirit of teaching.
Yeah, right. Well,
Yeah.
it's if that's where your passion is, that's good to hear. I'd like to talk about a big concern. Stories in the news recently document a pretty steep decline in the enrollment at Minnesota State colleges and universities. And I wonder if you could explain for us a little bit about why this is happening. It's worrisome because the overall population is growing. What are the factors here, and why we're having this decline?
Sure. Well, I think there's probably a more nuanced story behind those numbers. When you in general, there's an inverse relationship between the health of the economy and our enrollments.
Right. So when jobs are plentiful, we have a record low unemployment rate. Right. You can get a job at a decent wage. Why go to school? Is that what we're talking about?
Or if you lose your job, maybe that's the opportunity you take to go back and get additional education.
Right.
Yeah?
Right.
And so when we look at the baseline, the baseline usually, when they look at those enrollments declines, is about 2010. But 2009, 2010, we were in the Great Recession.
That's right.
And so we had historic highs in our enrollments.
Right.
And so if you look before that compared to now, we're coming back down to more of those pre-2009, 2010 numbers.
Okay.
But we're still seeing some factors at work that are attributing to some of those declines, like the economy. Many of our students work, and I think they're under pressure to take in more hours as
Right.
employers are struggling for workers. I think you're also seeing more traditional students who have done online learning in their high schools, participating in online. Southern New Hampshire University, got Western Governors. They're seeing record enrollments.
So these are big national private universities that.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Western Governors is still a nonprofit, but yeah.
And then there's the pandemic.
There's still we saw students who said the modes of learning that we went through in high school, we didn't like it. We didn't like the online experience, and so we saw some students step out after graduation. We're hoping to draw them back. We've got both on-campus and online experiences that we can offer.
So what would you say to young folks or parents of high schoolers who are debating about whether and where to go to college? How would you respond to a person who says, "Look, I'm making almost $20 an hour at the Amazon fulfillment center, or I'm making $18 an hour as a barista, and I actually have health care. Why would I pass up this good full-time job now and maybe even take on debt
Yeah.
to go to college. What do you say?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, adults and young adults, they have to do what makes sense for themselves and their families.
Right.
I mean, Amazon's a great example where it might not be a bad idea to hold on to that job because they offer tuition reimbursement programs.
Aha.
Right? So DCTC was part of their network, and you can get, you know, a big chunk of your tuition paid for by Amazon, and they were often flexible in their hours. So I think, you know, there are smart ways to hold on to some of those jobs, and we've been working with more employers to try to encourage them to offer those tuition reimbursement programs because it's a great retention strategy for employees.
You hear this refrain, though, that higher ed is no longer important or necessary.
Yeah.
Is
Well, the data still supports that. You know, when you look at, and I was looking at a Forbes article that looks at, on average, a high school graduate can expect to earn in lifetime earnings about 1.6 million.
Okay.
Right. If you have a 2-year degree, you can expect at least $2 million.
So that's $400,000
More in your lifetime earnings, right? And then with a baccalaureate, you're looking at about 2.8.
Holy cow! So it goes from 1.6 to 2.8,
Right.
almost double.
Yeah.
Double your personal income if you have a 4-year degree.
Right, and that's on average. So the other thing you have to take into account, and this is just really, you know, it's good for students to be very thoughtful when they go to get their degree. Is you know, where are they going to go to get that degree? Because, you know, the amount of debt that can really impact your ability to buy a house, a car.
Of course.
And so you want to be really thoughtful about that. But then you also want to be thoughtful about what you want to study.
Right.
You know, we don't all go into I went into English because I loved the opportunity to teach, and I knew that I wasn't going to make a lot of money at it.
Right.
But I did it with my eyes wide open. I think for some of our students, they get a degree and not really understanding the career landscape of what's available to them and how they could progress through a career afterwards. And that's something we are working more on to try to help those students understand that career landscape so they can make good choices on the front end. And then they can be really thoughtful as they go out into the workforce.
Yeah, there's no doubt we should probably nudge people towards in the direction where the jobs actually are. Not everybody can be a music major or an art major or an English major. A lot of jokes out there about how useless it is to be an English major. But I've also seen studies that show that even if, you know, you always hear the stories about the guys with a PhD who's driving a cab. I've seen it reported that even if you are a bartender, if you are a highly educated bartender, you'll make more money than a lesser educated bartender. I think it's because you can conduct a better conversation. But it's interesting. Beyond the money, what are the benefits of higher ed?
Oh, sure.
I mean, there's a lot, right?
Yeah. Well, there's a strong emphasis right now on career and technical training, right?
Right.
And getting a well-paying job, and that's important. You really need to be able to provide for your family, and but there's also the opportunities for that individual growth and development, as well as the civic growth.
Right.
You know, when I talk to employers, and I spend a lot of time every week going out and talking to area employers, and those professional skills are invaluable. I mean, they want you to have the technical training, but they really want you to also be able to solve problems,
right?
To work well with others, to think critically and creatively,
to see the big picture in life.
Yep. And to have, and more increasingly, to have intercultural skills, right? That to be able to work with an increasingly diverse workforce, with increasingly diverse customers and clients, and so having those higher order skills, which, you know, are often baked into even our technical programs in the 2-year schools. Those are going to make you really invaluable, and that's going to give you those opportunities to advance too.
Right. Yeah. So the idea of a well-rounded, even liberal education, liberal arts, has tremendous value beyond the still significant financial advantage.
I think the opportunity for many of our colleges and universities is to help students translate those skills into how they're going to apply them in their professions and in their lives. I think we expected that those students should be able to adapt those, and that's not often a skill that, you know, we're very good abstract thinkers in general,
right?
Which is why we took a life of, or pursued a career in academia. But I think we can do more to help those students see the value in those things that they're learning and how they would apply in their lives. Yeah.
I've read also that people with degrees, people with more education, actually are healthier and live longer than people without degrees. No small thing.
Yeah.
And that people with degrees and more education are often more likely to get married. It's just an endless list of things that get better with more education. Not to disparage people who, for whatever reason, didn't or can't get it. And maybe you could describe some of the things you're doing to help the non-traditional student, the people who just aren't good at school. That's and I think one of the most important issues facing higher education is this racial disparity that we have between higher ed attainment for white kids and Asian kids versus Latino, Black, and Native American kids. It's a gigantic challenge.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in what you've shared. Maybe I'll just start by talking about giving students those opportunities for hands-on experiences. Because you're right, there are aspects of the traditional high school experience and even traditional college experience that just doesn't speak to many of our learners.
Some people just can't take tests. They just can't. They can't sit still. Have trouble focusing, and yet they're educable.
Right, absolutely. And many of our post-secondary enrollment students come to us with just that inspiration. I was talking with one young man, I guess maybe a year ago, who was at one of our area high schools, just didn't really like the experience. He came over as a post-secondary enrollment option student, or PSEO, into our heavy-duty truck repair program. And so he finished got his high school diploma, had one more semester to finish his program, and he's now a lead worker at one of our interstate power systems, and and he's making very good money. He bought his first house. I don't think he's 21 yet.
That's amazing.
and he's been working on becoming an international competitor on the Skills USA, or the international skills, where you can compete internationally in various trades, and it's sort of like the Olympics of trades. And he's training to go and compete.
Wow.
And that's the kind of thing that you can create for people who, for whom the traditional models of education don't work.
That's pretty inspiring. Do you have, I'd like to hear a couple more stories like that. The individual stories about individual success always inspire folks. I met a young woman who was off on a terrific scientific career from Inver Hills. Tell her story.
So she's
NASA, I think.
There's two stories there. There's one that a young woman came to us who wanted to study engineering, and she was attracted to the program because we have some just outstanding faculty in that program, and who really just are student-centered and really work to help support those students and help them learn. And she thrived at the college. She transferred to the University of Minnesota, finished her 4-year degree, and then now she's going just to get her PhD at MIT.
Wow.
In material science, So, great. You can start with us, and you can go anywhere.
Yeah. Inver Hills to MIT.
Yeah, right. And then another student we have right now, who's in our engineering program, has been developed a rocket competition club, and so they've been building rockets and competing and outperforming many 4-year universities. And she's part of a project right now where she's actually doing research for NASA as an intern. It's outstanding.
Yeah, that must keep you going in your work.
It does.
To know that that's the kind of success that you're having.
Well, and not every student has those success stories, and that's the piece when we speak to the inequities in education. Many of our colleges and universities perpetuate those disparities in outcomes between our white students and our students of color. And so that's something that we as a system have committed, that by 2030 we're going to close our educational equity gaps. That's the number one goal in our strategic plan at Inver and DCTC.
That's a system-wide effort, right? What's it called?
Equity 2030.
Equity 2030.
Yep.
What are some of the elements of that? How are you going to do this?
Sure. Well, like any organization, we're designed to achieve the results we achieve. And we've had a historic gap. And when we look at, for example, our fall to fall persistence and completion rates, you know, our white students and our students of color, there tends to be a 7 to 8% disparity there. And so we've got to think about how we design that educational experience to ensure that all of our learners can thrive. And that's looking at the campus climate. Are we creating a very inclusive place where all students feel valued for who they are? Are we looking at how we would design our curriculum?
Is your faculty diverse?
Well, that's the other piece, is we've got to hire faculty and staff who reflect the diversity of our students, and we're working on that. We're not there yet.
Yeah.
We're looking at our policies. Do they have disparate outcomes on our students? So it really you have to look at the whole system, and you have to start working to change that system.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I know that Minnesota still ranks very high among the states in overall educational attainment. The percentage of our students who have some sort of credential, the last time I looked, was approaching 60%. So it's not like we're failing completely, but we've run into some challenges, obviously, that we talked about before, and we need what do we need to go forward? We need funding, right? What are the funding needs right now?
Right. Well, and I think we're working to one of the greatest opportunities we have are adults who've earned some college credit but not a degree, so they haven't been able to necessarily realize the benefits.
Right.
And so we've been working both within our colleges as well as across our system on what we call credit for prior learning. Right, is to recognize the life experience and the certifications or positions that people have had, and to give them college credit for it to help accelerate their degree. Because if they already know it and they can demonstrate it, we should be able to give them credit for it.
So there's a lot of people out there who've accumulated credits. They don't have a credential. I happen to know some kids like this in my family. My son, for instance, who's been here and there, never quite figured out how to get the credential, but he's got a lot of credits, and this is, I'm going to leave here and go back and explain to him that what we used to call MinSCU is working on this, and that there's ways to, where would a person go directly to do this?
They can go to any of our colleges and universities and sit down with an academic advisor or a counselor and talk through.
Call up their transcript.
Right, and talk through what that, I mean, I think the first thing is to really work with them to figure out what it is they want to study, and then you can look at how those credits that they've earned will apply to that degree.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, our time is up. This has been most interesting. Michael Berndt, president of Dakota County Technical College and Inver Hills Community College, and I'm Dane Smith, and we'll see you later.
Thank you.